Welcome, Libra, to your Jupiter Direct 4-month deep dive forecast. Jupiter, the planet of hope, optimism, and expansion, has been in a retrograde for 4 months. Across the 10th, 11th of March, it stations direct in the host of Cancer, where it's exalted, right through to the end of June. But what does this mean for you? I'm going to share with you the big picture of Jupiter's journey through Cancer, the first 311 years, what you've achieved, what the challenges have been, what the retrograde has been, but what this next 4 months holds in store for you. I'm going to share your event chart from a purely Libra perspective, so you get a sharper feel for what's going on, but also share with you the upcoming influences heading your way, which feature your ruler Venus in a very positive manner. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. So Jupiter rules 2 zodiac signs, and typically what we read about Jupiter or watch on YouTube, it's very much about its fortunate benefits. It is, in traditional astrology, the greater benefit. But when Jupiter arrived in Cancer last June the 9th, it was met in a square by the planet of resistance and restriction, Saturn, and the two came into an exact 90-degree square on the 15th of June. And because on that event chart when Jupiter arrived, that suggested that however much you set your hopes high, however ambitious you were, and however much you wanted luck as far as your work was concerned, it's really been down to the relationships within that situation of whether you have made progress or not. Now, recently through the 4-month retrograde, you could have done a lot of soul searching. The sign of Cancer is how we feel and trying to work out what you really want so it matches your soul purpose. But now on the screen is the event chart for when Jupiter stations direct, based on Greenwich Mean Time and Universal. And that has Jupiter at 15 degrees, the most northerly player in your chart, so very influential. And 15 degrees is particularly significant in the sign of Cancer because the exaltation that Jupiter enjoys in this sign, which is a benefit, is amplified. 15 degrees is the midpoint of the 30 degrees of the sign. But also Mercury, the planet of communication, may be in detriment in the sign of Pisces and in retrograde, but in the 6th house, along with the thrust of Mars, the karma of the North Node, and the innate drive and energy of the Sun, well, they're all in that very practical area, leaning into Jupiter. In fact, the Sun and Mercury have been connecting splendidly to Jupiter just as he turns around to go direct. So, what I would say to you, even if you did experience some frustrations from the 9th of June last year, particularly round to the autumn, the fall in the north, and the spring in the southern hemisphere, it was because of that Saturn Jupiter square. They did start to collaborate better late last year. You may have seen some progress, but then that slowed down. Jupiter, the biggest physical planet outside the Sun, has slowed down since the 11th of November, being retracing its steps. And you may have experienced some real bad frustration. Now, ironically, of course, Saturn is back in the sign of Aries, and it's very close to Venus, your ruler, in the sector of relating. So those relationships, the quality of them, whether it's professional or personal, is still very much part of the formula of whether you can turn Jupiter to your advantage. But what changes now is that Venus is in a fantastic link to Pluto, the planet of transformation, in a very self-expressive part of your chart. And I think Venus and Saturn being together, although it may have seen some cool words, some distance, or even perhaps a breakdown in a weak tie recently, what they're saying to you from now through to the end of June is you're going to have the confidence to set your boundary, but particularly when you're dealing with anyone influential. So that could be where you're pitching for a job, a role, having an interview, doing a presentation. If you work for yourself, if you're trying to do something more dynamic, You're much more aware of what you won't do as well as what you will, and that can be an advantage. But the ruling planet of the sign of Cancer, where Jupiter resides, is the moon. And that's in the third house in Sagittarius, ironically, the sign that most people think Jupiter rules alone. And that's a very bubbly place for the moon to be, but it's not a very emotional place. So it's important to make sure that with this very elevated, ambitious Jupiter, remember Jupiter can exaggerate. It can trick us into thinking that we're better than we are, or we're more experienced, or a job is just right for us. So we need to stay grounded. And the moon here just suggests some restlessness, I feel, particularly as on this event, as Jupiter goes direct, there is a quarter moon between the Sun in Pisces and the moon in Sagittarius. So essentially, we've got a ninth, 12th house energy in terms of the overall zodiac, which can be very amplifying as far as sensitivities are concerned. For you, 3, 6 can create stress and tension if you try too hard. So that's why important over the next 4 months to be realistic. And if you are realistic, know that in the middle of April, Venus, your ruler, is in a part of your chart that's excellent for finances. And then on the 6th of June, Jupiter emerges from the post retrograde shadow. So it gets back to the degree when the retrograde began on the 11th of November. And on the 9th, Venus, your ruler, joins Jupiter exactly in that 10th house. And even if you have encountered some real frustrations over the last 9 months, there is truly a golden prize for you to seize. As long as you keep the discipline going, as long as you're grounded, practical, precise, realistic, keep believing in what you're doing. If you keep going through the processes and keep those boundaries firm, a real breakthrough is possible. So, to summarize, as far as relationships are concerned, I think really you need to feel respected in any kind of relationship. You need to set your boundary. As far as finances are concerned, a big uplift can occur in the middle of April. As far as your energy is concerned, with that collective in the sixth house in Pisces, it is important to know that having Mars there can give you more stamina. So that's welcome. And as far as your romantic situation purely, I think it really is a case you need to be with someone who will show the commitment that you truly want, if that's what you want. On the screen is your March deep dive video, Libra, also Venus in Aries, if you've yet to watch that. If you'd like to know more in a written context about Jupiter in Cancer, please click on the link there, it takes you to my website. And also, if you'd like to work with me one-to-one, please see my testimonials below. If you'd like to order your personal horoscopes, great value, very accurate, totally unique for each person they're produced for. You can get 50% off. Apply Astro 26 at the checkout for Natal and Draco 26 at the checkout for Soul or Karmic. Wishing you all the best and goodbye.